how do we layer on the skills that we as therapists will teach youth in ways that are digestible and applicable in their lives? And so when we think about, building these skills, sometimes people are thinking like, what's the benefit of me engaging in this? Because sometimes it's hard to get a kid to pay attention, or it's hard to get a kid to, listen to me about what emotional skills might be helpful to them. And what you want to emphasize as kind of your talking points is that the things that you're trying to do with the youth in your lives are establish this foundation for just talking about and normalizing the challenges they're facing and the feelings that they might be having. It's for you to be able to practice skills that, even if you practice it when you're not stressed out, it becomes easier for them to actually practice when they are stressed out. It's kind of this idea of practicing defense off the ball, so that when you're actually playing defense, in stressful situations, you have a lot more practice in calling up that feeling of calm or that particular skill you want to practice. The next thing you're telling youth is that, if you're really trying to market this, it's this idea that skills give you choices. If you teach emotional skills, you then have more options for the way that you might respond to certain situations, the way you might respond to a partner, a friend, a parent, and the way that you might think, act, and behave. The last thing that we think about in teaching these skills is by saying to youth that you want to explicitly focus on their wellness routines, on your relationship with them, and on the skills they use to deal with stress. You're saying to them, I want to create this safe space where you can express your emotions and we can kind of workshop that together. Regardless of what challenges you might be facing, I'm here for you and I want to kind of stay a step behind you on that. So here are just a couple of those skills. So the first, and this is fairly simple, and there's lots of resources that you'll likely find on all the skills I'm about to outline within Walden Wise, but it's just understanding feelings. It's making sure that during the day, we're taking time to check in with ourselves about how we feel and check in with the youth in our lives about how they feel. And labeling emotions, just basically, is immensely predictive of someone being able to use these skills to help with their emotional health or to deal with stress. What we want to get across as the major talking points for youth of any age is that labeling your emotions is good, that it's possible to experience multiple ones at the same time, that we experience emotions in different intensities. So in that sense, there might be a day when, for example, if you're grieving a loss, you might feel a 2 on sadness and a 7 on anger. And then the next day, you might feel a 9 on sadness and a 0 on anger. And it can be kind of inexplicable as to why emotions might vacillate in those intensities, but it's all valid. And it's something that we should be reviewing and thinking about with youth. And the last thing that we think about is how we can feel feelings in our bodies and how we can make sure that we're thinking about the ways that we connect to our physical selves. And it's not just all up here in the way that we feel emotions. So the next skill that we think about with youth who are experiencing stress, and this is something that is front line in terms of the way that we support adolescents. So it's that when adolescents are experiencing stress, sometimes what's easier is to do something first as a way of boosting mood before you get into some of the heady kind of like abstract analysis of their thoughts and their emotions. So in that sense, when we're looking at activity scheduling, it's that we're saying to youth, before we get into like a long discussion of this, maybe we do something to decrease our stress or to boost our mood. And let's take an inventory here. Let's create, maybe when we're not in a stressful situation, an inventory of activities that we might do together or that we might do alone that we feel like boost our mood. The other major thing we think about when considering these categories and creating an inventory of activities is what might take 3 minutes, like in my case, watching an SNL skit on YouTube in a break between sessions, or what might take 30 minutes, like in my case, taking a long run in the morning or after work in the evening. And these are things where you try to think about how you can then pepper them throughout the week as a mood boost when you need them most. So one of the next skills that we think about is, a lot of times in psychology, one of the criticisms that we get is this idea that if we teach skills, we should be able to address every single emotion. And that's often not true, or that we might be able to decrease every single emotion. To be sure, there are skills we also have to learn that help us to ride out uncomfortable emotions when we can't change anything. So in that sense, mindfulness provides one of the kind of core skills related to distress tolerance or the ability to kind of ride these waves. And what we're thinking about is, regardless of kind of how we're feeling in a particular moment, we can bring ourselves more presently to that moment. So for all of you who are sitting where you're sitting right now, listening to this talk, it's that mindfulness entails paying attention on purpose to the present moment. The easiest way to do that is to use your 5 senses. It's to bring yourself to an awareness of how your body feels right now, sitting where you might be sitting, or standing, or lying. To bring yourself to an awareness of what you might be smelling, or the temperature in the room that you're feeling tactily kind of on your skin. Or it might be thinking about what you're looking at in this moment and bringing yourself a little more presently into that. A mindful activity for something like this would be to think about, even as I talk, or even as I speak of a skill that you might be familiar with, your mind can tend to drift. And we don't want to be judgmental of that. We want to be compassionate. We want to tell ourselves, I know my mind's drifting to either fixing dinner or cleaning up dinner, or what I'm going to do to get the kids' baths going, or what I'm doing for work tomorrow. But it's bringing yourself mindfully and non-judgmentally back to that present moment and thinking, okay, how can I be present with what we're saying right here? How can I make a commitment or an intention to change something related to my own emotional health or that of youth I support? And mindfulness comes in many forms. There's formal practices, body scans, sitting mindfulness, walking or eating very mindfully. There's also informal practices, like just trying to be even more mindful as you go about daily kind of activities. And then there's also, mindfulness that you can find, at least, through YouTube videos or recordings or apps, where you're really focusing on your breathing or your bodily sensations and trying to kind of bring yourself out of the kind of running thoughts that we might have in any given day. And the more you practice that muscle, the better it works to be able to call up that feeling in situations of stress.